the reason to revisit this is that actually we've learned something new in the intervening time since last week, where we talked specifically about the question of Donald Trump, the classified documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago and that he makes no bones about the fact that he brought there from when he was president, and the indictment of him for stealing classified documents. And I laid out what I thought was the best defense, which I think is actually, as you know, I'm not a legal expert, but I did consult legal experts, and I think completely compelling, which is he's the president. He has the right to declassify documents at any time for any reason, any document he wants. There is apparently no procedure for doing so, so it's not even that he forgot to file the papers, and that basically by walking out of the Oval Office with those documents, he declassified them and doesn't look like a crime. Certainly not a crime worth putting somebody in jail over, right? Federal indictment on criminal charges. Certainly not a crime that we would risk becoming a banana republic over, where not only is a former president being put on trial for a crime that almost certainly isn't a crime, and if it is a crime, is almost certainly a trivial crime because he had the right to declassify those documents with some sort of a magic spell or whatever it is that the Democrats imagine he should have done. But the point is, this is also, the Biden administration putting on trial its leading opponent in the Republican Party. This is banana republic bullshit. But anyway,
is he leading?
Yeah, I believe he is leading. And I also think, in addition to being diabolical, the DNC in urging the Biden administration to do this, which is no doubt what happened, is also mind-bogglingly stupid, because it is creating the very powerful argument that the force that controls our politics and does diabolical things is its leading opponent is Trump, right? They're creating another argument for electing Trump, which I think is a mistake. I don't think he's the right guy for the job. I've never thought he was. But they are making an argument that's pretty hard to ignore, right? Which is that the power structure, the deep state or whatever it is, seems to really dislike this guy enough to threaten him with prison. Maybe he really is, the thing that they fear most, in which case you've just made an argument for him. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I wanted to cover the somewhat more subtle developments of this last week. So Trump was arraigned in Miami, and he gave a speech in New Jersey after that arraignment. And the speech, I watched the speech, absolutely fascinating, but I want to highlight what MSNBC did in response to an obviously historical event, right? A former president being charged with a felony that I think could put him in jail for 400 years or something absurd like this.
Seems like a long time.
It's a long time, but the idea that he's on trial for something that could put him in prison is a very profound turn of events. It is decidedly important, whether you think he's absolutely guilty and this is a major compromise of national security, or you think, as we said last week, it's a nothing burger with no patty, right? Either way, this is big news, right?
You said that.
I did. That. We did not. You're not signing on to that formulation.
No.
But anyway, can we play the...
I need to say that former President Trump has just started making public remarks, just as he did on the evening of his first arraignment on criminal charges. That was April, when he was booked on 34 felony counts brought by the state of New York. Now, tonight, after his arraignment on federal felony charges, he's speaking again, this time to an audience of his supporters that's gathered for a campaign fundraiser tonight at his golf club and summer home in New Jersey. We knew heading into this that he was planning to make these remarks. We are prepared for his pre-fundraiser remarks tonight to again be essentially a Trump campaign speech. Because of that, we do not intend to carry these remarks live. As we have said before in these circumstances, there is a cost to us as a news organization to knowingly broadcast untrue things. We are here to bring you the news. It hurts our ability to do that if we live broadcast what we fully expect in advance to be a litany of lies and false accusations, no matter who says them. And I do not say this with any glee. I hope it is clear that this is not a glib decision. We take our responsibilities seriously. We revisit decisions like this all the time. We make the best call that we can in real time, every time. But tonight, our call is this. We will monitor that speech by the newly indicted former president. We will not carry his remarks live. If he says anything newsworthy, we promise we will turn that right around and bring it back to you.
All right. Now, what MSNBC says and what Rachel Maddow elucidates here is that they are not going to cover President Trump's response to his arraignment because they've already decided that it is going to be full of lies, and as a news organization, broadcasting lies compromises their credibility.
She says they're not going to broadcast it live. She doesn't say they're not going to cover the speech.
Well,
I don't know what they did, but what she says is they're not going to broadcast it live.
Fair enough. But I do not believe they broadcast the speech. They may have taken a clip or two. But here, I don't think we need to split hairs here. She says we are not going to cover it live because we already expect it to be full of lies. We are a news organization, and lies are bad for us to broadcast. Okay,
She does.
This is nonsense on several different fronts. One, this is a former president of the United States. As far as I know, the first president of the United States indicted on criminal charges. His response, if he cries, if he breaks out in a beautiful aria, whatever his response to that is news. It turns out that the speech in question contains a detailed analysis of his defense. It is absolutely cogently argued by Trump. He does present exactly the defense I talked about last week. Okay? He says, I am not guilty of a crime, and what's more, Joe Biden is guilty of a crime because Joe Biden did the same thing, took documents home, and he was vice president, had no right to take them home. He was not allowed to declassify them. So the point is, first of all, you can discover something about MSNBC in the fact that they have decided that this is going to be a speech of lies, and they are not going to cover it. It's a campaign speech, right?
Again, they're not going to broadcast it live.
Right. But nonetheless,
Different from not covering it. Again, I have no idea if they did or did not cover it, but what the statement that you just showed us is Rachel Maddow saying we're not going to broadcast this live. That is the thing that she is.
Fair enough. However, this is a news organization. What they have done is prejudge the speech. Prejudice, prejudged. They have decided what the content of the speech is going to be, and the best thing you could say is that they weren't going to broadcast it live because they expected it to be lies. That's already a violation of their obligation as a news organization to broadcast this newsworthy speech. Lies, I don't know, whatever it would be. We have a right to know what it is. And what they are doing is they are behaving at what is a non-journalistic, paternalistic fashion at best. And really what they're doing is they're using the excuse of paternalism. We're not going to let you hear what he said. We're going to judge it for you in advance and prevent you from being able to hear it. They are doing that because, frankly, what Trump said is highly compelling and raises questions.
But the point the decision was made, they didn't know that because it was a question of whether or not they were going to broadcast it live.
Okay, but
so they were predicting. They were making a prediction. They may or may not have. That prediction sounds like, I don't know, was falsified. But
yeah, but here's the test.
I guess if I'm going to steelman the MSNBC decision here, there is a lot of stuff that is newsworthy, and they're making editorial decisions all the time about what to and to not show. In addition, again, trying to steelman the MSNBC position here, if you have a policy that under X, this is the list of things which will always inherently be newsworthy, and therefore, if this has happened to you, we will broadcast live something, 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 then that will be gamed. And there will be people, most people won't, right? But some people will go, that's my opportunity then. And not that Trump's set up to be indicted and arraigned here, but given how everyone is playing it, it may end up being good for him.
I don't get it. Okay, the test of the hypothesis that this was their judgment in error, that this was going to be a campaign speech rather than relevant to something newsworthy like an arraignment, is that then they would realize upon hearing the speech, that was newsworthy, one end to the other. We will now broadcast it in its entirety. Mm-hmm. Okay? I can't say for sure that they didn't pick some hour late in the night and do that, but I do not believe they broadcast that speech in its entirety, which they had an obligation to do because it was news. And the fact that it contained his defense, and that defense actually casts a very serious pall over the idea that we are living in a democratic republic, right? We are now living in a nation in which a sitting president his Justice Department is having his leading political opponent jeopardized with obviously the equivalent of life in prison and well beyond for a crime that his opponent did not likely commit, but that he himself did commit. Now, we will come back to what role Biden actually plays in this later here, but my point is this could not possibly be more newsworthy. And if they thought something else was going to come out of Trump's mouth, and if they somehow mistakenly understood their job as to be to decide what was worth hearing and not hearing, rather than anything Trump says in the aftermath of being arraigned on federal criminal charges is worth hearing, doesn't matter how inarticulate or full of lies it is. It's still worth hearing in this case, but that's not what was delivered. And the fact that I do not believe that they reversed course and broadcast the whole thing upon discovering their error says it wasn't an error. It was political. And like with so much with MSNBC and CNN, the idea is the pretense that, hey, you've turned in for, access to the truth, and we know this is Trump, so it's not going to be true. It's going to be the inverse of true, and therefore it is our obligation to do something else with this time rather than let you hear what he said for himself. And then he goes on to deliver his legal defense in public, and people aren't going to hear it. They're going to assume that what he did was lie, right? That is MSNBC revealing the game, and that is really the point.
Well, so one thing there, if we had one and only one, state-owned media outlet, and it was MSNBC, and they said, "Yeah, we're not going to show this live," and you don't know, I certainly don't know, and then they did not say that they did not broadcast it later, and there was no other way for it to get out, that would be a much different situation. I am not defending them here, although I don't know that I wouldn't if I had more information. But presumably, the speech is broadcast. I mean, you said you watched it, so it's out there otherwise. It's not that MSNBC, by nannying its viewers, is keeping those viewers from having access to it, but they certainly make it less likely that most of their viewers will end up watching it.
Right, but I mean, look, we live in a democracy, or a democratic republic is the proper way to say it. And the idea that you are going to take some large fraction of the voting audience and you're going to add obstacles to their doing this. So instead of tuning in and seeing the news, what they're going to have to do is go find the news for themselves in some channel that they don't happen to be watching, right? This is a kind of election meddling, right? That's what this is pretending that you've got a narrative of history and we're not going to let you see any of the stuff that would allow you to discover that it was untrue. And I will also point out, we had a situation in which the cruddy bullshit that MSNBC puts on and CNN puts on was counterbalanced by the cruddy bullshit that Fox puts on. And you could, by dodging back and forth between these things, make some sort of a corrective, right? Mm-hmm. But we actually know what happened here at Fox, because somebody at Fox did put up a chyron in the aftermath of the Trump arraignment.
That's the text that scrolls across the bottom of the screen.
I don't think the chyron is the sum total. Some of it scrolls, some of it doesn't. Yeah, show this screenshot. So somebody, wannabe dictator, speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested. Now that is
So this is this week.
Yeah. That is, of course, a provocative bit of text. And
the picture they've chosen has Biden looking uncharacteristically strong.
Well, it is. I believe it must be taken from that speech with the red backdrop.
It doesn't look like that backdrop, but
okay. Well, in any case, look, MSNBC broadcast bullshit. Trump is going to lie. We know it because it's what Trump does. I mean, it's what Trump is. We're not going to show you lies because we're a news organization, not a lies organization. Okay, that's bullshit. Okay, this was news. Fox came up with some bullshit of its own, which is it took a scenario in which one interpretation is that this is actually, Banana Republic stuff unfolding right here in America, and it gave an extreme interpretation too. Wannabe dictator. Does Trump want to be a dictator? I mean, does Biden want to be a dictator? I doubt he's got it left in him,
I think he wants some ice cream.
I think he wants some ice cream too. So, do I agree with, what Fox put on the screen? No. But is it worse than what MSNBC did? No. In fact, it at least raises an interesting question. And what Maddow did was prevent the raising of an interesting question. Is he maybe just innocent of the crime because he was president and for whatever reason the president has absolute authority to do what he did, right? MSNBC's audience isn't going to get to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that the last 3+ years now has made abundantly clear to me is how rarely when talking heads of any sort, so-called journalists, so-called heads of public health organizations, etc., make pronouncements, are they actually speaking from knowledge? Right? Did they actually go and look at the thing, and do they know firsthand that these are safe and effective? This is almost certain to be a lie, and therefore, now, like what Maddow said, and, the safe and effective proclamations about vaccines that couldn't possibly be known to be safe, and therefore is the other thing next to it a lie as well, are different sorts of I don't even want to say they're both lies, are different sorts of rhetoric. But in both cases, what you see, if you look behind the curtain, is, and we saw Walensky when she was still the head of the CDC, or I don't know if she stepped down yet, who knows, but saying on camera things like, "Oh gosh, do you remember, when we saw this thing on CNN, and then I knew that the numbers were such and such for COVID." Like, you're the head of the CDC. You're getting your data from CNN. What is going on here? Right? Like, I'm sorry. I'm still so blown away, and I don't have the specifics on that particular pronouncement from her. But I thought, do any of these people actually know whereof they speak? And given that they don't seem to, is that maybe actually intentional and protective? Because if they don't know that they're lying, then it's harder to catch them in the lie, because they've just been handed a slate. It's like, don't go into the footnotes, don't read the primary literature, don't talk to the scientists, don't look at don't ask how the clinical trial was actually done. Don't ask any of those questions. Just sort of talk at this like ethereal, what's good for people, what do people want to hear? Let's stick with the PR guys. Let's stick with the marketing. And so, I mean, I think I'm not as thrown by this particular thing from Maddow and MSNBC as you are, but it also just feels like, yep, that's rhetoric. That's not journalism. Just like it's been rhetoric, not public health, rhetoric, not science, all the way down on all of these topics constantly.
Right. But so I don't know. I think what you're saying is you're not thrown. Okay, go for it.
The only question here is that I don't think you could come up with something more newsworthy in the last year. It doesn't matter what Maddow said. It doesn't matter if Trump lied for an hour or anything else. The fact of a former president being indicted on felony charges and speaking about that is the most newsworthy thing. We could disagree about the time frame, but certainly this week, they broadcast every night. They have hours of news, most of which is not newsworthy anyway. This is the most newsworthy thing in recent history. I don't think there's a reasonable argument against that.
And what's more, if I can complete your argument, this news organization and all of the others that look like it, the New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, all of them, are sitting in a location, a niche, and preventing real news organizations from emerging. So the idea that you have news organizations that do not report the news is not just, oh, that's a waste. It's
No, there's opportunity costs. They're taking up space and actively preventing would-be competitors from gaining ground.
Well,
and
but
actively, therefore, keeping people from actually getting informed.
Yes. I would also point out the punchline to the Fox News version of this, where they came up with a overly simplistic view of this turn of events, is that the person who is responsible for putting that on the screen was quickly fired. Now, and then there's the other punchline, which was, do you know what cannot be allowed to happen? You can't. 0 is a special number. 0 is a special number. Tucker Carlson on Fox News was an example of an exception to 0, right? This was a person who was delivering, wasn't always stuff we agreed with, although I feel weird even having to say that, right? The number of people who tuned into Tucker Carlson's monologues and found real value in them regularly, and the people across the political spectrum.